Take one.
Take one. Okay. The arsonist had oddly shaped feet. The anteater ate an absurd amount of ass. The orangutan organized an orgy. Okay. I am here right now with none other than my main man, Ross O'Loughlin. He's from drumroll. Oh, wow. I don't know if you could have told by the way he looks, but he is in fact from Ireland. In this case, you should judge the book by its cover. So Ross and I are going to talk a little bit about reply emails. I know you've already learned a little bit about this, but I basically wanted to go a little deeper into how to use these, specifically in this case, without getting on the phone, and sort of go over this quote that I heard from Dean Jackson at this mastermind, which was basically, if I'm not doing it, then I consider it to be automated, is what he said, which I really like because we always think of automation as maybe a software or something like that, whereas if another human's doing it, that's automated. So basically, sort of go through that concept and how Ross is basically, you've worked with Dean Jackson, first off, who is not obviously the first person to get people to reply to emails, but he does have the 9-word email.
Yeah.
And I know you've worked with him, and mainly you've used this in the bookkeeping business that you work with. So if you want to very briefly just explain sort of...
Yeah, I did in the bookkeeping business. So
which
the client
you sell...
So there's a client and he has an online program where he teaches people basically how to start their own virtual bookkeeping business. And then I have another client and he's in the music production space, and he, for any aspiring music producers, he gives them kind of, think of it like strategic coach, but for music production. He teaches people like how to get, more tracks out per week, how to get the best work. It's less about the music, like fiddling with the knobs, more about how to be a solid music producer. So I've done this a lot in those businesses, and I've done it in my own as well. And then another client I have from the copywriting space. So like the concept with Dean Jackson is that he calls this concept called conversational conversion. And the basic premise is that, everyone uses email primarily as a broadcast tool, right? Where, I love the way Dean talks about it. And this is all Dean, and I'm a big fan. He's one of my mentors, teachers, whatever you want to call it. And the way he talks about it is most people treat email as if they walk into a cafe or some store and they get up on the table and they get the glass and they knock on the glass. They go, "Excuse me, everyone, can I get your attention? I've got something to say." And like you're saying it to the whole room, and everyone will go, "Oh yeah, he's heard that," right? But the chances of them coming up and talking to you, very, very, very low, right? But they got the information, great. Oh, he's having a sale next week, fantastic. But most people read their emails alone, right? Like on the toilet or in the queue somewhere, or like just by themselves. They're bored and they're checking their email. And Dean was like, what if I wrote my emails as if they were going one-to-one, right? And it's the difference between getting up on the table in the cafe and going, "Everyone, here's what I have to say," and walking up to someone in the line at the coffee shop and going, "Oh, hey, Ian, like, how's it going?"
Yeah.
Right? Like, how are you doing today? Or are you still...
I'm doing really well, thank you for asking.
Yeah. It's like, are you still doing that Lionheart thing? Or that...
I totally am. Yeah.
And that like, the chances of you responding to me are like exponentially higher because it's more of a one-to-one person engagement.
And just as a quick side note on that, one of the big things that I started doing when I started writing, or reasonably early on into my career, was, I think it's Tim Ferriss and Tucker Max had both said that when they wrote as if they were writing to one person. And not just, and I don't mean that like the idea of one person, like literally they had a person in their mind. I think Tim had two people because he had like his friend who had the job and then the friend who didn't. And it was like he was writing to either one of them in each bit. I have like a certain friend I still think of sometimes when I'm writing stuff that I'm like wondering, should I say this or not? I think, what would I say to him? I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with, in general, starting a conversation as opposed to even saying to your list, "Hey everyone, hey guys."
Yeah.
Like just speaking to them.
Yeah. And it's also the difference between that, having one person in mind, But then, like, I've noticed you do this a lot with your emails as well, which is like you email like a real human would email to someone else, right?
Yes.
Like if you email me as an individual, right, and you're asking me like, hey, we're going to the game next week, right? Like you're not writing a 4 to 6 paragraph email or whatever. You're like, hey, like Rihanna,
I just put up this
Rihanna
new
is playing
video
next
or whatever.
week
Yeah.
in Austin. Do you want to go?
Yep.
And you might like the subject line would be concert or next weekend. Like that's how a real human emails. And someone is like, we're all finely tuned at this stage to recognize: is this a marketer emailing me as a marketer, or is this a human emailing me as a human?
Yep.
So the idea with this concept is email like a human and just watch like you will get 10, 15, 20% of people on your list responding.
Yeah,
that's
I didn't you have one? You had like 40%. I know it's a small list, but you had like 40% of people responding.
Yeah,
Which
responding.
is, even if just getting a 40% open rate is outrageous. A 20% open rate is very good.
Yeah.
And it's not to say, I mean, your deliverability is going to affect this, right? If you're not getting delivered, it doesn't matter what he's saying. But I actually spent time going through, 'cause the thing is, I don't really interact with people via email. I text them or I call them, or whatever it is. So all of my inbox is just marketing emails because I've signed up for every list ever. And what's interesting about that is I started to think, though, what do I send to people? How do I talk, and how do people talk to me? And there was one time I sat down and wrote 600 subject lines in one sitting. Literally, it's like 629. I just thought, what are all the crazy things I can think of? But a lot of the ones I've used are like tiny little things, like one-word subject lines work ridiculously well. And actually, on this topic, you actually are one of the few people I've communicated with via email, because especially before Ross and I had met in person, we were just internet friends. He was in Ireland, and so we were actually communicating via email. But I was on your list, and I actually knew when it wasn't to me because you used my name.
Yeah.
The second somebody used my name in the subject line, I'm like, that's not. None of my friends have ever been like, Ian, I'm thinking of you. They're like, check it, fucker, or whatever it is. But like, they don't use my name in the subject line, and I know that can get increased opens, especially if the subject line is just the person's name.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really thinking about things from that human level, which is a crazy concept we've talked about before, treating people like people. But getting that dialogue going. So that's what's interesting about what Ross has done, is he takes the dialogue, like where he takes the dialogue and how they do that and how they've scaled that to, because the bookkeeping business does a few million a year. It's not a tiny business, and they do a ton of opt-ins. And so he just told me something which I had never heard, which is fascinating, that the woman on your team is doing 100 conversations an hour.
She can. She's not
can.
always
Not
at
always,
that,
yeah.
but like we're.
Let's get there
Sure.
after, and then I also want to say the difference in the 2 questions I recently asked my list and how big a difference it made the question you actually ask.
Yeah.
So so go ahead and sort of
Sweet.
explain what
So
you
the
do.
way that this whole concept works, right, is whenever you talk about, hey, you should get in conversation and dialogue with your email list, everyone's like, oh, I haven't got time for that. Because the problem that people have is they'll get in these conversations, or they'll try one of these tactics that some marketers suggest they try to get into dialogue, and then they'll end up with 50 conversations in their inbox, and then there's just this like back and forth, and they think the sale is going to come from this engagement back and forth. And it's like, no, that's not how sales works, right? Like sales works by figuring out, is this person qualified? And if they're qualified, let me make the offer and then try to convince them that they're ready to go, right? So what you really want to do is you want to make sure, well, who should you be focusing on? And B, how do you direct the conversation, right? So Dean uses
So
this.
put that down. So A would be.
So A will say, right, who should you be focusing on, right?
Yeah.
And then B should be, where should the conversation be going, right? So we'll just shorthand conversation going, right? So that's the kind of overarching kind of concept you want to be working with, right? Now what Dean Jackson has this beautiful concept called the 5-star prospect, right? And he's saying your job in sales or marketing is basically to identify the 5-star prospects and then just focus on them, right? So the first star, right, is willing to engage in a dialogue, right? And like you'll see, this is basically like human to human stuff, right? So we'll just say willing to talk for for shorthand, right? Basically, is this person willing to respond to me? And if I reply back, are they going to reply back? Right? Are they willing to actually engage with me? Right? Then the second one is...
Also, real quick, the biggest, one of my favorite things about this and why I always aim for replies is deliverability.
Yes.
If somebody, what I've heard and what I've experienced is that if people have responded twice, you're now in their contacts,
Yes.
which means you are getting into their inbox
Every
first
time.
off, and probably primary tab as well in Gmail, which is massive in itself. That's why you want to open this dialogue, and it's worth getting that second reply too, not just the first one.
Yeah. So the first one is willing to engage in a dialogue, willing to talk, right? And then the second one is friendly and cooperative, right? Like, is this person being one of those snarky dicks that's just like, ugh, you're so full of it, right? Or like, yeah, ha, like I had someone recently reply to an email where we had mentioned, can you please whitelist us? And they were like, you can put me on your blacklist, you racist piece of shit, and then put like whitelist.
Oh my God.
Because they were like,
That's pretty funny.
That's
actually.
pretty funny.
And also, if somebody does respond with the saying that you are full of it, what I recently did, and it was one of my favorite emails so far as if I've just started, is I took he said you're so full of it. I made that my subject line, and then I used the from name, some poor guy, and then I wrote an email from some poor guy saying you're so full of it, and I got multiple responses from that one saying, literally a couple people said, you are now my favorite copywriter, LOL. So if somebody does say that, just use it for another email.
Yeah. So then, like, they're friendly and cooperative, right? So, like, if you ask questions and you're trying to guide the conversation, are they going with it? Are they giving you answers that are, like, worthwhile? Or are they just being like, yes, no, like, not really starting to engage and open up, right? And then the third part is that they know what they want, right? Because this is really important, right? Like, not many people realize that some people just opt in for whatever, and they're not actually looking for the result. They're like, oh yeah, I'm just kind of learning about email marketing, whatever about it. But if someone is like, man, like I have a list of 20,000 people, I have all this traffic, I'm just looking for split tests, that person's way more qualified, right? So do they know what they want? And then this can kind of be broken down into two parts, right? Which is, right, what they're aiming at. They know what they're aiming at. Right? And then the second part is what's stopping them, right? What's the block, right? So if you can get someone to kind of divulge these two things, this person, they definitely know what they want, right? Then star number 4 is they know when they want it, right? Like if someone is like, I am ready to start running split tests tomorrow, versus, oh yeah, I'm thinking of starting an online business sometime in the next year. Like that's a completely different level of prospect, right? So know when they want it, right? Oops, want it, right? And then star number 5 is wants your help in getting there.
So this is the 5-star.
This is the 5-star prospect, right? Wants your help. Right, let's just put it down.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah. So
okay, so should we
we'll walk through this and some examples.
Exactly
right?
how to do it. So let's
let's
break
it down.
And then we'll go through exactly how to actually do this. So this is basically what you're going to do. And you may be sitting wondering, well, how do I actually find out if they're friendly and cooperative? Or how do I find out if they know what they want? So we'll go through that on the next video. In the meantime, really start to think from a perspective of how do you talk to people? Analyze how you talk to people. Analyze how people talk to you via email. Even in general, like on phone calls, different things like what do you send your friends? And start to look at things through that lens, because most people are just copying all this bullshit, and they are, it's, you know, sometimes really markety type subject lines and stuff can work really well. But these conversational emails, which actually, so I'll tell you really quickly, I sent 2 emails recently to get replies, specifically with that goal. And the first one was, hey, what would it be? Subject line is question, which is one of the best subject lines I've ever used. And it works really well. I used it at the client and they got 4 times the click-through of their whole email than on like their like really broad scope solo ads. But so I used that and it said, what would it be worth to double your conversions? I got 1 response and it was my friend who's a deliverability expert who said, this is really good for the ISPs. And I was like, thanks, bro. Little did I know that nobody was going to respond, because what I was trying to do is I was being sort of arrogant in the way that I was trying to get them to pre-qualify and say, it would be worth this much. And then I'd be like, well, then why the fuck wouldn't you sign up for the 30-day challenge? Didn't work very well, to be honest. But today I sent an email. The subject line was templates ? And literally before, and all I said, would you be interested in an emails of the month club where I send you a handful of fill-in-the-blank templates every month that you can use? Just fill in the blanks, you can, and send them. They'll look like these, which was a link to the other templates that I have, which basically I've only ever had 5 templates, and people buy them like crazy, and they use them and make really ridiculous amounts of money. And so I'm like, why am I not doing this? Before I just said, hit reply if you'd be interested in that. And I said, like in the PS, these are the same emails I charge $1,500 per to a client for, and the same emails that this guy used to make $80K. But literally before my email program had even sent to my own email address, I had 2 responses. Mm-hmm. I got like 30 responses in the first 10 minutes, and my inbox right now is literally sitting with a bunch of people saying, yes, I'm interested, yes, I'm interested, yes, I'm interested. So what I would, I'm still going to send, when I open this up, I'm going to create the product now. I have real interest, and it's going to be an email of the month club, but I'm going to open it and send it to my broadcast list like I would normally. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to respond or have somebody else go in and say, hey, good news, it's here. And literally have them reply, because the likelihood of them opening that reply in that thread is so much higher than just another email that could have deliverability issues or not have a subject line they're into, whatever it is. So now I have probably 60 or 70 people that I know are going to open the next email that have said, yes, I want that. And I got one incredible bit of feedback, which was this guy said, I'd be super into it if I could see one of the emails first. And my thing is, well, I can't just give away the template, right? I am going to do a small tripwire before it, but I can't give it away. What I'm going to do now, because of this one little email from one guy, I haven't even gone through them all yet. I opened one. It happened to be really useful. He said, if I could see it. So now I'm like, cool. I need to put a video at the top of the sales letter that literally just goes, hey, I just want to show you exactly what these are going to look like and how easy it is to fill it in. I wouldn't have thought of that if I didn't get that. Yeah. That's why these are so valuable. It's not just sales, it's the data you're getting and the feedback you're getting.
Yeah. Just to comment on that as well, that idea of going into the inbox and replying to the thread, it's what a real human would do, right? Like, how many times do you get an email from a friend and they don't, they just when was the last time I was speaking with Ian? It was this thing, and they find that thread and they reply to it. And sometimes people do it when it's not even the same topic, mm-hmm. right? It's just...
Oh, because I know that somebody's more likely to open an email if I reply to theirs, even if it's from 6 weeks ago, than if I send them a new one.
Yeah. So that's it's that sort of thinking that you can really do it. Yeah. People, again, they get caught up in that. That's a lot of work. It's much easier for me to just send a broadcast to everyone. And that ties back into what you're saying. It's when you're doing it to people that have expressed that they're 5-star prospects, they're highly qualified. So A, it's worth the time. And B, once you figure it out.
If your conversion rate is 50% on those people, then that is worth every individual email.
And it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't have to be you that
does it. It can be somebody else. I can write the first one and then have somebody else go through and send them all. Yeah. So, okay, now we're going to get into the how, and there we go. I just want to make sure it's actually filming and shit still. Yeah.